All right, so stop me if you've heard this. Google is dying. Now, there is that thing with the FCC, but specifically, people typically talk about Google dying because of search and specifically because of AI. And you've probably heard, stop using Google and start using AI for search because everybody is doing that. In fact, most people will say Google is dying because now their market share has dropped. People aren't using Google as much anymore. They're using AI, all of that. But we also have to look at the statistics and really kind of see what that looks like. So there was a recent report that was just released and looked at Google versus Bing, DuckDuckGo, Yahoo, all that, including ChatGPT as well. And something that they found is that Google saw in just 2024 alone 5 trillion searches, or about 14 billion a day, whereas ChatGPT had about 37 million search-like prompts a day. Now the thing is though, is that we have to remember is that people actually visited ChatGPT a lot more, but they estimated how many of those are actually searched. This kind of reminds me of something that as a UX and web designer, we have to kind of think of. As a UX and web designer, we always want to create for the largest desktop size, and we always want to create the latest and greatest iPhone. So iPhone 16 Pro, Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, right? We always want to design for the largest, biggest, and baddest phone. But the thing is that we also have to remember is that not every single user is going to have the latest and greatest. In fact, whenever I design my websites and when I was doing apps and kind of prototyping that, you always want to make sure that you are actually designing first for the smallest screen. And to be honest with you, it's not the sexy one, it's the iPhone SE. It's the small phones that most people are going to have. In fact, people keep their phones longer. And the same thing with the desktop. You don't want to create for the largest desktop, you want to create for the smallest and then kind of go from there. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that, but it's the same thing with AI. Not everybody is using AI the same way. As business owners, we may be using it one way, but the average user may A, not be using it, or B, just using it to come up with stories and different things and images and things like that, and not maybe necessarily using it for search in the way that maybe business owners are using it. It just kind of depends on the user. So the study saw that as we take the different things that ChatGPT is used for, we saw that it only had 37.5 million. Here's the kicker though, is that in 2024, they saw that Google actually grew over 21%. They actually had 21% more searches than 2023. So this idea of that Google is losing search volume is actually untrue. Google actually has 373 times as many searches as ChatGPT in 2024. Now, we also want to think of Perplexity and other AIs. So Perplexity and other AIs, they have about the same amount that ChatGPT has. Now, Perplexity is a little bit more just search focused, but they have a little bit more users that would visit Perplexity AI versus ChatGPT, but not by much. The average was probably around 41 million, and those would all be searches that would actually be done for Google search type queries. So even taking that, ChatGPT search only has about a 1% share. You add Perplexity on there, you can probably add another 1, maybe 1.2%. So altogether, there's really only about a 2 to 3% market share of what ChatGPT and AI in general has, whereas Google grew over 21% just last year. Now, one of the interesting things is that yes, the click-through rate of Google did go down. So there was a lot less click-through rate. So in other words, people were using AI and they were just looking at it. And that's something that we also have to think about when it comes to ChatGPT and AIs, is that people are going to search for their answers. And even though those sources are going to be there, they're probably not going to look at it. And so those click-through rates are probably going to continue to decrease. And so there's got to be a different way that you have to think about as a business of how you're going to show up. When it comes to SEO, people always say that SEO stands for search engine optimization, which it does. But I always like to say, especially over the last year, is that SEO stands for people are searching everywhere online. And so that means that you also need to figure out, how can I make sure that everywhere people are searching, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Perplexity, Google, wherever they're searching, that I'm starting to show up. And that's part of what your SEO strategy needs to be. So yes, Google may be losing some share. And yes, of course, there is the FCC ruling and all that. But do remember that Google gets 373 times more searches than ChatGPT and AI does, and it actually grew. So that doesn't mean that people aren't using Google anymore, but it looks like the click-through rate has gone down. So really the question is, where are you showing up? Because remember, people are searching everywhere online.